Legendary 60 Minutes correspondent Lesley Stahl is reflecting on the recent firings of Scott Pelley and others at the show as the hardest chapter of her career. Stahl, who has been with CBS News since the Nixon administration, told Puck, quote, "This was by far the worst experience I've been involved in or even witnessed." And she admits that the decision to stay was a difficult one. My next guest is the grandson of one of the most iconic faces of 60 Minutes, Andy Rooney. There you see him. Rooney's commentaries about life's big and small absurdities became the signature ending to every broadcast until he was 92 years old. His grandson, Ben Fishel, is also an editorial cartoonist. Ben, really appreciate you being with us. In a piece for the LA Times, you ponder what your grandfather would have made of this, what he would have said about what's happening at 60 Minutes. So what do you think? What would he have said?
You know, if my grandfather were around today, I'm sure he would say something pithy and brilliant, and we would all agree with it. But unfortunately, he's not here. You have me, and I can only guess what he might say. But the reality is, I don't think he'd be too happy, neither with the situation at CBS or the state of the media at large. And I'm sure he wouldn't be silent about it. And I think that's really because CBS has kind of broken one of the cardinal rules of journalism, which is that you don't allow the owners, executives, or advertisers to meddle in newsroom coverage. And it seems pretty obvious to me that CBS has changed their posture on Trump to protect the business interests of their owners and his massive media merger. You know, again, I don't want to speculate what Grandpa might say, but he never pulled punches with his grandchildren, so I don't know why his employer would be any different. You know, it's a very confrontational business at 60 Minutes, and I think be confronting his bosses, maybe not on air, but certainly he would stand with Mr. Pelley and Lesley, and you know, I'm sure he would want it all to work out.
I'm sure, as you mentioned, it would have been pithy and brilliant, whatever response he had. Lesley Stahl, along with other longtime correspondents, Bill Whitaker, John Wertheim, they've decided to stay there because they say they don't want to see this program die. Do you think that staying in the room is the right call here? Can they help bridge the deep divide in the newsroom?
I do. I think they should stay and fight. I enjoy watching them. It's great for the viewer. You know, there's a lot of language out there from Barry Weiss and others that they need to pivot and be more digital. But the reality is that's just the medium. Good journalism and good storytelling, that's always what really matters. And they're really good at it. And, you know, frankly, with something like 60 Minutes, you need veteran journalists. And I hope they stay on for as long as they're willing. I mean, I know, you know, my grandfather worked up until about a week before he died. And I hope these folks can do the same, or at least, you know, until they can do it well.
And as we mentioned, he was in his 90s
yep.
and did it till the very end there. I want to play a little bit of what 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley told the New York Times after he was fired.
There was a thumb on the scale for the president's version of events that I felt was a level of political influence that I had never seen in 37 years at CBS News.
You raised something similar in your writing. You said at the heart of the concern is a question that should matter to everyone, regardless of politics. Who controls the news? You also acknowledge that most media companies nowadays are owned by larger corporations. But you also say the firewall between the corporation and journalistic oversight, editorial oversight, is starting to erode. What should we do about that, and why should Americans care deeply about this?
Well, I'd like to see the owners and the advertisers and the executives stay out of the newsroom. That would be ideal for me, but that system has never worked extremely well. I don't have the right answer here. I mean, I think it's a shame. So, you know, one thing I will say about my grandfather, though, is that even though a lot of people remember him as sort of this quirky guy who commented on very trivial things from doorknobs to junk drawers, he actually started out his career at the Stars and Stripes newspaper, and he was covering World War II. Now, the Trump administration has effectively seized editorial control of the Stars and Stripes. I mean, they're claiming it's to get rid of any woke distractions, but they've also barred journalists from embedding in Iran and covering that conflict. I mean, it's if I didn't know any better, it would almost seem as if the Trump administration doesn't want people to know what's actually going on. I honestly, when I worked at NPR for 10 years, this was a great thing about public media. We didn't have corporate bosses. We didn't have to chase ratings. That was one solution. But now Trump has defunded public media. So that's on the outs as well. I mean, it's not a good ecosystem right now.
Ben Fischel, thank you so much for bringing some of your grandfather's legacy to our broadcast today. We appreciate it and your insights.